on the Places We'll Go show. Today, we have another incredible guest for you on the show. He is a real mover and shaker in the marketing industry and being described as one of the most dynamic and forward-thinking marketers in our land. So it's with real pleasure that we get to go inside the brain of Arjoon Bose for the next 40 minutes so we can discover what really makes him tick. At the moment, and I say at the moment because his career is absolutely skyrocketing, he's the head of international creative and growth ideas at General Mills and covers regions like Europe, Australia, Asia, and America. Hey, honestly, that's a pretty big flipping deal there.
Latin America.
There we go, guys. A correction already from Arjun. Meticulous boy. Anyway, previously, he was actually the head of marketing for new ventures at General Mills. And he also has led the marketing for the Haagen-Dazs business as well, something I know he's particularly passionate about, and I'm sure he still follows through very meticulously to this day. Now, as you can imagine, Arjun has been recognized by many publications, including being the campaign's Power 100 list. So look, honestly speaking, if there was ever a bet that I was going to make in life, I would bet on Arjun to go all the way. So he's definitely one to watch. So look, without further ado, I just want to say a massive welcome to the show, Arjun. It's just super to have you on.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. And Richie, I don't think anyone's ever given me such a glowing intro.
There we are.
I mean, I'm beyond flattered. I don't even believe half the things in there. But listen, I mean, it's been a heck of a journey. I mean, I've loved my career in marketing. You know, I have to say I've been incredibly fortunate along the way. I've learned a lot, keep learning. And I think that's really it. And, you know, we're so thankful for you guys, you know, really being practitioners of marketing. And so thank you for everything you guys do to really sort of take our craft and shine a light on it.
Thank you very much, Arjun.
There's a lot of love going on in the early days of this podcast. No, fantastic.
It's called Mumbai Love.
There you go.
I mean, Richie's from Mumbai. I started my marketing career in Mumbai, so you know there's a lot of you know, it goes around, yeah.
I feel like a voyeur into something there, but anyway, it's fantastic to have you on the show, and mover and shaker indeed. Also, I know just from checking you out a little bit that you do a few things outside as well. So I was particularly impressed by the work you do with Look Good, Feel Better in terms of helping people deal with living with cancer. I'm sure there's other things as well. We'll come on to those. But just to get us started, Arjun, where are you? How are you? How are things shaping up in 2022?
I mean, thank you for asking, Mark. I mean, look, 2022, we're hoping it's not 2022. So I think we're going to take this with a very positive outlook. I mean, you know, we're starting to hit the ground running. We've just been through a bit of a reorg in General Mills. You know, we've sort of reorganized as an international segment, streamlining our Europe, Australia operations with Asia, LATAM. So that essentially means, you know, streamline priorities, you know, investments on our key categories, and what we really call is an accelerate strategy with, you know, dynamic teams that are really hungry to achieve what's next. So I think we're ready. It's been tough. We've been very resilient through the 2 years. We've learned a lot, and we want to just keep doubling down on everything and, you know, really ramping up on new capabilities. And we're excited and genuinely we believe, you know, marrying the current and culture and having marketing at the beating heart of what we do on our brands and really, you know, showing up with purpose every day and being grateful for who we are and for everything we have is going to be the way forward.
Hey, you know, it's interesting talking about reorgs. There's a couple of reorgs happening in the FMCG world of late. Seems like all the rage at the moment. But love to get a sense of, you know, head of international creative and growth ideas. Ooh, that's a lovely title. Well, what does it actually mean, Arjun?
Well, I'll tell you what it means. It essentially over the last couple of years, we've been very purposeful in how we sort of separate out our marketing between brand management and brand experience. So if you think to brand management is, you know, they're responsible for setting the brand strategy. They're responsible for what the brand stands for, the brand foundation, owning the innovation strategy. And brand experience is about a really focused effort on brand building. It's about, you know, building growth ideas and then orchestrating those ideas into action. So previously you would have known it as integrated marketing communications. Now this one's all about every interaction that a consumer has with our brand is a brand experience. Where I come in is, you know, once the brand platforms are set, I would then work with our brand experience teams to create these growth ideas and to really drive creative experience and amplification across our brands, across our regions. So really, we start from a place of creative, and then we build that out as a brand experience, creating work that matters. And the reason we say growth ideas is, I'm not the in-house agency. We absolutely work with our agency partners, but it starts from a place of compelling creative, and then creating connected experiences, and by being courageous. I'd say those are the 3 C's, and then obviously there's culture that you overlay on top, right?
Totally.
It sounds pretty leading edge to me, really exciting. And actually, you mentioned just, Arjun, in your first response that you're talking about new capabilities for 2022. Can you give a flavor of what's brewing in terms of those new capabilities?
I mean, the first thing is to say is, hey, we're in a very connected world, right? So the new mantra, the new thing that we talk a whole lot about is connected experiences. So I'm just going to say that, it's about experiences. Start from a place of experience. Ensure that it's, you're informed by culture, and ensure that you've got a strong connected commerce lens to it. That's really where we're trying to go.
Arjun, I'm going to take a step back for one moment, right? We've talked quite a lot over the years, and I actually dug a little bit into sort of how you kicked off, how you started your career, and clearly the journey thus far. But I love the story that you gave me many years ago when you said, when I said, how did you get into this industry? And I'm just going to give you one little anecdote, guys, and then I'm going to let Arjun take it away. He knows what I'm going to say.
I knew this was going to come back.
He knows what I was going to say.
Oh, dear.
He basically said, I chose my workplace. I chose the first company that I was in because it probably had a disproportionate female ratio. I'm being diplomatic here. Female ratio in the space. Is that correct, Arjun? Are you still buying by that story?
That is totally correct. And I think, okay, for Mark's benefit, okay, my background was in commerce and accounting. I think, I come from India, where, we place probably a disproportionate amount of premium on education, and, getting a degree that is potentially more, financially viable, likely to get your career. And I think I was on track to be a chartered accountant and get myself a job. Except I really couldn't imagine doing that for the life of me over the years. I bumped into a friend's brother who was studying advertising in a city called Ahmedabad. Richie, you probably know, you've heard of MICA, which is one of, it's probably the preeminent school for comms and media and advertising. And he said something really fun. And I said, okay, what do you do? He says, I'm in advertising, and I went to the school called MICA. And I'm like, he said, it's the most fun you'll ever have with your clothes on and off. And I said, wow, I want in. What do I need to do? And he's like, okay, you need to try and get into this school. And I'm like, how hard is it? He's a bit like, not a lot of people know about it because everyone's really focused on doing an MBA. So you need to take the same entrance exam, except skip the part on math and focus really on the creative part. Focus on that part of the exam. And if you score disproportionately high on it, then that was the hack, you probably get into that school. And that's how it happened, Mark. So I got into that school. I tried really, really hard to get into advertising. No advertising agency would touch me, simply because I wasn't creative. I wasn't vibrant enough, because I did come from an accounting background. And so L'Oreal were kind enough to give me a job, and I it's probably politically incorrect at that point in time, but I think they had some hiring policies because they were disproportionately high on, a female workforce. They felt the need to have a bit of gender balance. And I did walk into that interview with hair mascara on. Now, that was a hack from a crazy aunt of mine. He says, go in there and make hell of an impact. And, and if you roll this back to early 2000s in India, not too many men were going to be willing to do that. So I kind of, I wore my passion right up front, right? On my hair instead of on my heart.
Awesome. And Richie, this is, I think, where we're going wrong. We're just, we need to create that sort of like cult in the School of Marketing. But great to hear the backstory. And obviously you made an impact, because, I mean, that's a bang of a start to go straight into L'Oreal, and also awesome company. What were the early days of your career like, forming that early stages?
Do you know? My first year was the one that I really, really valued, and I say this for anyone that certainly goes into CPG marketing or any kind of marketing. Your early year being spent in sales, being understand how trade is done, makes you really understand how marketing goes around. So for anyone who's making a start in marketing, I would say, going out there, understanding how distribution, how sales works, how supply chain works, and then how it all rolls up, and how business functions is such a fundamental part, right? Because and most importantly, it really makes you closer to your consumer, more than your customer, your consumer. You understand when you're in a small, like the word is kirana shop. It's a mom and pop shop, if you will, in a suburban town, why they're buying your product, what they're saying. And often you're able to build these one-to-one relationships. You spend a lot of time out there on the field, and you get the most richest of nuggets and the most potent of consumer insights, which really informs your thinking as you go back into marketing. So that's what I did. That's how I had my start, selling Garnier Fructis shampoo and L'Oreal Excellence hair colors in the suburbs of Mumbai and in and around. And it did wonders for my vernacular language capabilities, I will say, which is also a wonderful test for the brain, because some of us boys tend to only really speak in English, having been educated a certain way. You're flexing a slightly different muscle. We talk about multiculturalism a lot when you come to Europe and work in global teams. Actually, the beauty of India is, you're meeting people from different stratas, from different communities, and the way you need to flex to them teaches you a lot about situational analysis. And as I roll back, I really learned to appreciate that. And then I did get my start in marketing. And here's the thing I'll say, Mark. I started on Mabley, New York, right? Which is a nightmare if you think of it as a boy, because you have zero consumer empathy. I remember my first consumer focus group. It was a consumer focus group where we were testing 3 concepts: a lengthening mascara, a volumizing mascara, and a thickening mascara. And 24-year-old Arjoon was baffled and wondering what on earth is the difference between the 3. And there were women in there, in a dark room in Mumbai, waxing eloquent about the benefits of those. But I think if you simply break it down and say, right, I don't really understand the category, but this is business. The fundamentals of marketing can apply anywhere. If we understand that our consumer back then it was Gen X, right? They were people of my generation who were going into college at that point in time, in our 20s. And I spoke to myself, and I would get the best insights about, hey, what makes a brand cool? I would just pick up the phone and call a friend of mine from college and say, what is it that makes you love a brand? What is it you look for in your makeup? What are you watching on TV? And more often than not, you just distill those thoughts down and be able to have those conversations with your creative agency, be able to have those conversations with your media agency. What the hell? I would even call up my mom. And, often as they say, that's home is really where, your knowledge really flows the freest. And I would say that's really where I got my start. It forced me to be braver and say, you know what, you can work on any category so long as you put your mind to it, so long as you really try and understand your consumer, and so long as you're willing to have a lot of fun. And Maybelline was a lot of fun. So being able to
Arjun, I'm just gonna dive in here. I've just got these visions of you standing with like a bit of a Mel Gibson in like What Women Want, right? Trying to like put on the mascara and do the waxing bit and all this kind of stuff to try and get into the consumer mind. Oh man, I could totally see you do that. But you're just uber passionate. I mean, beyond you're able to go beyond the category and actually get down to the fundamental principles of what makes marketing or marketers. And I just feel that you always get that sense of curiosity and passion for the products that you're then trying to get under the skin of. clearly you made a transition, from a world of mascara into sort of a world of sort of more fast moving consumer foods, I guess, in some ways, with the likes of Haagen-Dazs and things like that. So tell us a little bit about that transition. Was it an easy one, or was it full of ups and downs as well?
No, it was, you know what? I mean, I spent 10.5 years in L'Oreal. And from Mumbai to a short stint in New York, to Paris, to London, worked across categories. So obviously, I think a decade on, when I won't say you've learned everything you can possibly learn about beauty. I mean, it's endless, but the mind was seeking for a new, different challenge. It was a different stage in my life. I was getting married, and I was looking forward to moving back to London at the same time and starting afresh. So I will say, the first thing is to say, what are the brands, right? Am I going to be really excited about the challenge? So when the opportunity to come to General Mills and work on Haagen-Dazs presented itself, you do not say no to Haagen-Dazs, right? Because to start with, I'm that sort of marketer. I have to be excited about what I work on, and I have to be excited about what's next on it as well. Not just, it's amazing to work on a brand that is going perfectly well without challenges, but Haagen-Dazs came with challenges at that point, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. The Haagen-Dazs that I sort of came to work on was a brand that had, iconic love, but it had been a little staid. And so it was in need of a bit of an electric shock, if you will. It had ticked along for years without really seeing hyper growth or growth and penetration pools. And if we were going to be harsh on ourselves, I was almost going to say it was on the borderline of irrelevance if we weren't going to do something about it, right? So the penetration hadn't grown in the last 10 years. We were growing at low single digits, and the retailers were having tough questions. So it was really an exciting challenge to come on. Having grown up on that brand, I spent a significant part of my early childhood in the US. It was the one brand that I wasn't allowed to have, and it was like the adult treat. So I said, you know what? It's going to be an exciting challenge to come on. So
it was sharpshooter Arjoon Bose coming in to solve the problem.
Now, but I'd say, look, firstly, the first thing to say is take all of the learnings you've had in your life and think to whether you're able to apply it in the marketing journey. So for me, Haagen-Dazs was the equivalent of L'Oreal Paris, right? Premium, a leader in its category, iconic. I'd worked on the L'Oreal Paris brand. I'd seen how it had evolved. It also had gotten sort of stuck in its ways, and it was able to reinvent. So I thought to myself, hey, there's a playbook right there in a different category that's certainly applicable here. And at the end of the day, you're also in very similar environments. You are sold in a supermarket, right? The consumer that's buying a L'Oreal Paris is also buying a Haagen-Dazs ice cream, because they're the ones that are willing to pay that little bit more for the extra indulgence. So I saw a ton of parallels, and I said, you know what? At the end of the day, marketing, you can do great marketing wherever you go. Still very much in the CPG space. The pace of innovation is different. Yes, in beauty, we tend to be potentially faster, if you will. Food takes a little, as I learned, takes a little longer of a gestation period. The R&D processes are different. You can't afford to fail. You can't really afford, you've got to, there's a lot more around, I'd say, quality and health and safety that needs to be, which you learn to really appreciate, because in food, you really do have the responsibility. I'm not saying you don't have it in beauty, but let's say you can afford to, have a little bit of fun, go into a trend, come in and out. And that's just how the nature of beauty works. In food, you're in it for the long haul, and you've got to do a lot of work behind it to get there.
Arjun, on the Haagen-Dazs, because we shouldn't skip over it too quickly, because it's a mega brand and mega turnaround. I love that expression of electric shock. Not heard that before, but that's a great metaphor. So do you think that you learned something new through that process, or was it just, you talk about, there's a bit of a playbook, but what were your learnings around that transformation process?
I mean, here's what I'll say. I think one of the things different about how we were organized was, Haagen-Dazs was the only true sort of global brand that we had within the org. And while it was a global brand, it also had a ton of autonomy in certain regions. Now, what I'll say is, the advantage that we had on Haagen-Dazs was, there was a real investment from the global team to want to try and do new things. So being able to have strong allyship was one thing we learned. Haagen-Dazs was one of those brands where if you put your hand up, there was always takers to come and try and experiment. So we had to do a few things like, completely rechanging the brand identity, going into new categories. I think what I did learn was, if back yourself, but pace it. One of the most fundamental things is, it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you're going for that big, hairy vision and you're unable to see it. But somebody once said, can you see the next step? So I think somewhere, if you distill it down, we broke it down into a series of next steps, small wins, and that way we were able to gain momentum along the way, which is slightly different to how we've sort of worked in a L'Oreal. L'Oreal was all about momentum right from the top in it, and you ride it. It wasn't quite the same way here. I think you had to build, trust was sacred. You build that, have a strong organizing principle that everyone needs to buy into, and then take people along the way on the journey, and celebrate those small wins. And then suddenly, before you know it, momentum will be with you. So it was a slightly more reversed way, and I learned a lot about how, you use the power of an org, which is organized differently if you've got a strong organizing principle.
Arjun, I want to go back to a little bit of another thing that I don't want to skip over, really, where you described your career, particularly in the early days, of being pretty international in nature, and the desire to spending time in the likes of New York and Paris, and then wanting to come back to London. But of course, you started out in India, and it's no easy feat, to be honest with you, for anyone listening, anyone who's had this experience, for someone who's studied and lived in India to then get opportunities to go all around the world, particularly early on in your career, perhaps in an untested sort of career kind of way that you may have had at that time. I'd love to get your sense of, how you were able to navigate that. Like, what were the ways you were able to forge that international career pretty early on, clearly beyond working for international companies, but even, there must have been things that you were able to bring that gave them confidence that you could thrive in an international environment.
No, absolutely. And certainly back then, I will say, Richie, it was a whole lot tougher. I do look back with a great degree of pride. I was the first sort of Indian from the L'Oreal India subsidiary to go over and work in our global headquarters in the global marketing, international marketing team. I'll tell you why. I think a few things, a few macro factors. It was the era where brick was sort of emerging. We also in India were, we had the autonomy to try and do a few things. And I'd say while we were at it in India, we were pushing new concepts. We were pushing new ways of doing marketing. We were early adopters of digital, if you will, back then already, whether it's, banner ads or whatever it is. We always had this experimental mindset, if you will, which certainly gets noticed. And I'd say one of the things I certainly pride myself on is being a generous expert. If I've learned it, sometimes it's just easy to get on with it. Early on in my life, when I was a young brand manager, I believed in sharing it out, not just within people who were working on other brands in India, but let's just say with international teams and international forums. And certainly, it would catch the attention of people. And I don't think I necessarily did it in a deliberate way in which I'd say, this is going to further my career, but consider it peer-to-peer mentoring. But and this is just how I've been all my life. If I've learned something, I believe in sharing it, and if you share it passionately enough, for sure it can get infectious. I think that's really the one thing I've seen over time. And so it just so happened that the global president of Garnier was in India on a bit of a visit, and we had a very passionate discussion about a few things that I felt were working on the brand and not. We were also one of the pioneers in launching men's skincare on L'Oréal Paris in India. And, some of the ways in which we had done it, Richie, were very innovative and breakthrough back at the time. So, since you understand our Indian landscape, we opted to sell men's skincare in 2005, 2006 in a bookstore, like Crossword, if you will. We opted to go and sell it in men's grooming stores like Raymond's, because instead of going into a beauty counter where men were not likely to walk into the L'Oreal Paris counter of a Shoppers Stop. So we really sort of flipped the script in terms of, going into alternate channels, which is quite unusual. And people were like, right, we found this, we found a route to market, which is rather unusual. A whole lot more work went into going there, but we were going after the right consumer pool, if you will, that had the means and the affinity for male grooming. So I think we caught the attention. There was potentially an opportunity to come and create a male grooming brand for Garnier globally. And they said, here's this guy, he's trying a few new things. We've got a little less to lose. Guy doesn't speak French, but maybe he's willing to come over and give it a crack. And I always say yes to something once.
Well, that's a perfect comment to cap what I was going to say, which was there's a lovely sense of adventure that comes through, Arjoon. I mean, it's brilliant, but also very specifically a sense of generosity. So the sharing, the mentoring. Mentoring is a key part of School of Marketing. We help many people in the UK to get on and up in their careers. What role has mentoring played for you? Have you had some great mentors that you can talk to?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I wouldn't quite be anywhere without, the mentors I've been lucky to have in L'Oreal, and, some of whom I still stay very much in touch with. I'd probably talk very much to the first one I had in India, was our general manager for our L'Oreal India business. His name was Philippe Raffray. An adventurer, if I've ever seen one. Probably lived in close to 17 countries, left L'Oreal, came back in. And I'd say he's the one that really believed in my dream. And he said, you've gone to boarding school. I'd spent a ton of time in the US when I was younger. And, I always craved to be in a company that would fuel curiosity. So I think that's the first commandment where he said, if you're curious and you're courageous, and at the end of the day, you also have to have your ducks lined up in a row. He said, look, all of those things are wonderful, but early on, and he said, at the end of the day, you've also got to keep your slate clean, right? You've got to do the brilliant basics. So he said, do the brilliant basics, and then, dial up your strengths and go there. So I'd say Philippe was an extraordinary mentor. And I'd say, even as I was preparing to take the next step and go international, I think his tips were very valuable also in terms of how to navigate, a global French org, if you will. I'd say, and there've been two others. There was one, the global president of Garnier at the time, Jacques Chal, who's now the global chief innovation officer. I'd say my love for innovation and my love for, trying new things, my love for experimentation, my love for, can I say, ideas, and just saying, there is no such thing as a bad idea. And you know what? And he'd always encourage us to say, smart has the solutions, but stupid has the stories, right? And I love that. And so he said, he just encouraged us to be stupid sometimes, because the amount you learn at the back of it, at the end of the day, takes you a whole lot further. So Jacques was the other mentor I've been lucky to have, and the last one that I've been fortunate to have along the way was Jeremy Schwartz. He's probably been my longest lasting one. Jeremy was the MD of the L'Oreal UK business, went on to become the global CEO for Body Shop for L'Oreal at the time. Jeremy is an outstanding human being, someone who, again, would always force us to go back to being human centric. Somewhere he'd almost want to, probably, focus on being solution oriented. And, I've really been very fortunate to have these people in my corner as I've gone along, and as I've gained in confidence and in skills, their guiding principles have stayed with me. I often share everything I've learned from them with people who've been in my team. I genuinely pride myself on being able to share back. I truly enjoy marketing forums, the ability to go back to business school. I find those incredibly enriching, Mark. So I think right since I was in L'Oreal in the UK, I mean, any opportunity I had to be a bit of a company ambassador that allowed me to be a bit of a face to students, whether it's going back to recruiting in business schools, whether it's being able to talk at student fairs. I think it works two ways. You learn a whole lot more than the other way around. I've always enjoyed going back to my alma mater, whether it's college, whether it's my business school, and sharing case studies. And as we've gone along, any forum that affords me the opportunity to do that, I find the best way in which you can learn is when you're sharing back and when someone's sort of riddling holes in whether it's your concepts and things. So I say I just learned by doing that.
I tell you, it's amazing, Arjun. And as you were speaking in that last moment, I think you've just been an absolutely brilliant mentor with us. So I'm going to certainly pick you up on it after this call, and get you more involved in what we're doing. It's like
I'll
Mark said.
be an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, I'm probably not your most usual mentor. I probably don't have words of wisdom, or apart from looking a bit sagacious, maybe nowadays, I'm ready to go be a little left field. So and that's often worked for me in most scenarios, because that's just how marketing life is shaped up. I think it's the beauty of marketing is agility. I think the greatest of marketers are the ones that are the most agile, that are ready to go back to ground zero and reinvent as much as is needed.
Totally. And I do like I love that thought around, being more left field. And I think more marketers actually need to be left field, because ultimately it's about standing out and being different, right? And you certainly, come across that in spades, but with a real sense of passion and strategic understanding for our discipline. So it's it's a real killer combination that you've got, Arjun. You remind me of the Michael Jordan.
Asking heretical questions, as they say. And I think so long as you're doing that. But I'd say, like you said, if as a mentor, I'd say there are three things you've got to be, and I try to be that as much as possible, which is being useful, being relevant, and being entertaining. And so long as you're these three, and you have these in buckets, I'll always say it's going to be fun both sides.
I love that, especially the last moment. I think too many people forget that last moment. I often say I'm in the game of edutainment, as opposed to education. So it's very, very true. I was just saying that you remind me of this Michael Jordan quote that basically says, I missed every shot that I didn't take. And I know you're a kind of guy who keeps shooting. You are a shooter, and that's great. You're always going after something. It feels like, you got a passion and sense of just that kind of constant kind of need to move forward. But along the way, therefore, will come lots of ups and downs. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the downs that you may have faced across your career and how you've been able to face up to them.
There've been plenty, if you ask me, because sometimes, when you're it's no joke. I think, you only go up to be able to come down, and vice versa, and anything goes up must come down. I'd say I've been incredibly resilient. Some part of it probably is down to the Indian DNA, where we just learn never to give up. Mark, maybe I'm not doing a great job in terms of appreciating it, but when you go through an early childhood where you're up against a billion plus, right? You develop a bit of an ultra competitive mindset, not in a, I'm going to knock everyone along the way as I go along, but I'm going to get up every single time and try harder the next day. I'd say that attitude has served me well. Yes, of course, there've been dismal failures in, whether it's certain launches we've done, certain campaigns where we've sort of bet our house, and, they've sort of, we've landed up with egg on our face, and, we spend way too much time trying to unpack what went wrong as opposed to focusing on what's next. I'd say that if you're able to change the mindset on that, I'd say that's probably handy. I think, being able to embrace a culture of failure, saying, so long as you fail and fail fast, I'd say that's the attitude. So I'd say over time, we've sort of tried to go after those ones where you try and unpack, or you probably break down your chances of failure by saying, right, I'm going in there. You worked out a bit of an MVP, if you will, saying, okay, if I fail fast, am I able to pivot fast enough, right? So the failure is not a colossal one, as opposed to a failure where you're able to shapeshift fast enough. I'd say that. And also having an eye of, having a sense of where it's going, right? Where you're not too far down the road, right? Sometimes, so I'd say somewhere, if you're too process orientated, where you're locked and loaded and there's little chances to reroute, and you look like you're headed for failure. So I think it all comes down, Richie, to agility, right? So if you've taken too long, if you've strived for perfection for way too long, and you've overanalyzed things, chances are you're likely to fail. So you know what, trust your gut a whole lot more, have a little bit of data to back you in, but also know that you've got the wiggle room to exit. I'd say that's how we've managed to, navigate some of these failures, sort of, and have a bit of a mindset where you're migrating the PNL. You know what I mean? If you can get people to migrate the PNL and say, oh, you know what, this isn't so much about a loss as much this is about a learning, then somewhere people are a little easier on that one. But I'd say, again, it comes down to how you set the expectation on failures.
Richie described you as a shooter. I had you down as explorer/adventurer, similar. But if you look ahead to your future career, what adventures yet to have? Can you even imagine where your career is going to take you?
I'm always, I leave the imagination. I try not to imagine what I can have, right? I try very much, especially as I've gotten older, I try and focus on the journey. I try and focus on the people that I meet and the experiences I can have. Where can my career take me? Sure, it can take me. I mean, I'm hoping it takes me to another, geographical adventure, if you will. I'm hoping it takes me to, as a marketer, I think I've got a bit of a fascination to go into something like tech or something. I mean, a future forward company where we are able to shape what's next and really shape how people's behavior are changing, right? So, right, you go from skin creams to ice creams to, what's next. I think, I'm ready for trying anything, so long as, I'm learning and having fun along the way. Because, I think, it's been a rich career where, we've, where I've been extremely fortunate, right? So I'd say the other part is, how can I therefore, I won't say be a force for good, because that's a little cliched and banal. How can I be a force for joy along the way? And, if you say good is the new cool, can we overlay that with a sense of joy and entertainment and be good in the same way? That's where I'd like to take my career.
It's such a lovely sense of gratitude for the opportunities that you've been given thus far, but with still such a feeling of there's so much more to come and there's so much more to give.
So you muted out for a bit, but
yeah, Richie,
he had this very beatific look on his face,
which
which I felt extremely. I felt
extremely. Back, guys?
You are back. You're back.
Okay.
You're back, Richie. Yeah. You're back.
There we are. I was just simply trying to big you up there, Arjoon, and just say what a lovely combination of gratitude, but with a sense of sort of forward looking about how you can really make waves into the future. I just love that positive energy that you bring. I also just want to say, by the way, on a point around agility, that actually we are currently struggling with something at the moment, and what you just said around the embracing of failure, agility, and the need to kind of constantly move from learning around the P&L. I think there's just something really pertinent to me, and it's struck a chord there. So something I'm going to take away. Arjoon, we're coming to the end of the segment here. Just last question. Lots of young people lost at this moment in time, thinking about their career, thinking about where to start, and certainly thinking about where they can go and how they can leave an impact. What advice would you give them?
The first thing, I mean, young people, I think young people fascinate me right now. I mean, it's the first thing to say is it's not as bad as it seems. When we were younger, Richie, we didn't have half the opportunities. We couldn't even dream of being able to do, a quarter of the things that are possible today. So I'd say, I'd say embrace the art of the possible, right? And that's how at least I've tried to live my life as much as possible. And the second thing I'll say is, find your why. Most people, it's a hard one to say, but in many cases is, what do you wake up in the morning for, and go after something that offers you something valuable, and and go to a place which lets you deliver what you do, bring your best self in the most authentic way, in a way that feels personal. And then, eventually you want to go down a way that lets you do it in the easiest possible way. So I'd say when you're younger, take risks, right? Like, one of, I wouldn't call him my guru and mentor, but, someone I draw a ton of inspiration from is Gary V. And Gary talks a lot about, how he was just putting himself out there, experimenting a whole lot with content. And maybe a ton of it didn't stick or didn't make sense, but he's often been right on a lot of his prognoses. So go against the grain, and genuinely back yourself. I think at the end of the day, if you follow your passion, if you follow your purpose, more often than not, you're going to be right. And there are no wrong and right answers. This is the first thing I'll tell young people. The world really is your oyster. Wasn't quite the case for us. I think some of us, and maybe our parents' generation, are probably going to say the same thing. They probably had to work a whole lot harder. They kind of were forced to stay in our boxes. Richie, we've been fortunate enough to have experiences, whether it's the ability to come and get an education overseas, and then start our careers in in international companies, and have the opportunity to see the world, travel, and get richer. I think younger people are, you get to travel from the time you're teeny toddlers, right? I mean, you are digitally native. Today, when you're 17, 18-year-olds, whether it's a YouTuber or a TikToker, they're making mega bucks that we couldn't even dream of doing in our 40s, when we were in our 20s. That's so, really there's no ceiling to what you can achieve. And when you, so the other thing is to find, and the last thing is to say, find your heroes, right? When you're young, one of the things I've seen along the way in we were working on this very interesting sort of virtual hybrid experience that we were doing for Gen Zs on our Nature Valley brand, was, at the end of the day, align with behavior. So if you're aligning with their behavior, understand their cultures, understand their platforms, and understand their heroes. More often than not, a lot of these Gen Z people have their heroes. Understand those principles of what made you tick, draw inspiration from them, and then just plunge in, right? Because you're young, you're not going to drown. You're not going to get your hands burned. You're going to come out with a ton of rich learnings. And I feel also, the way the world is shaped, we're a whole lot more open to people who come with diverse experiences. It's not the same old traditional way in which you need a business degree to succeed in a modern world, whether it's marketing, whether it's anything. So get out there, do interesting things. If you've got interesting stories, it just makes you a very interesting person, and and you'll come back richer, and you'll come back stronger.
Well, superb advice. Really live life to the full. I guess a brilliant sense of positivity from you, Arjoon. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So what we like to do at the end is just try and summarize some of the key learnings for everybody. It's quite a tough job. This has been quite a lot we've covered. But I'm going to...
Sorry, I waffled a lot.
No, not at all. Not at all. But I'm going to... What did I take out of it? So, Arjoon, you talked a lot about curiosity as the bedrock. Accountancy's loss was marketing's gain. And from those early days of Maybelline, the difference between volumizing, lengthening, and thickening mascaras, goodness me. But that sense of curiosity.
I'm glad that stuck.
Yeah, there you go. Was listening. So that sense of curiosity, which I think links to my second thing, which is, as I said, I think you're an explorer. A passionate pioneer, loving innovation, pushing for the new, experimenting. It doesn't matter if it's stupid, there's no right or wrong. It just comes through time and time again what you said, that you are a passionate pioneer, an explorer, and adventurer. There's also a big theme around generosity, the reciprocal nature of mentoring, the benefits of sharing the learning opportunity and helping others a bit further behind in their careers than you. That was lovely. But most of all, I just get a je ne sais quoi, to be a little French for a moment from you, a real spirit. You said so many inspiring things that give me energy: never giving up, embracing failure, agility, being excited for things, being a force for joy, the art of the possible. I think probably more than any guest we've had on, that just sort of that drive for exploring and new and novelty and new experiences. And even now you say there's so many more things that you want to discover. So for me, it's been a discovery to learn about your discoveries. And I thank you for your time, Arjun. And I'll pass to Richie to add anything that he takes out as well.
Thank you, Mark, and Arjun.
Thank you, Mark.
You've genuinely just added so much value to my thinking this morning. It's been truly inspirational, and I can, at the end of it,
Can I just compliment you on your great hair? Just being a man of beauty, by the way.
There we are. What can I say?
That was you, Richie, not me. And you're in your 30s,
perhaps.
not your 40s. So I feel.
Yeah.
There we go. It's my lockdown love.
I should have added. Can I just compliment you on your hair at like 7:45 a.m. in the morning? I am wearing this, and being an ex-man of beauty, I have a bad hair day, which is most days. So you'll excuse the hat and the unkempt January look.
Well, I must say, I'm particularly, cap's not too far away from me in case I have a bad hair day as well. So there you go. It's in every part of our lives there. But Arjun, I just honestly, it's been truly insightful, and I was just going to go on to say that I can totally see. And before I was a bit ambiguous, the head of international creative and growth ideas, but now I can kind of totally see why you fit that bill so well, which is great. I
love the fact that they let me do what I want, and they have no clue, and I'm a bit like, I'll write my own job mandate, and we'll figure it out. That's often been, at least in the last few years, that's often been, the story when you're able to bring in that little, I don't know. I don't know if it's the X factor it is, but somewhere it's a bit like, you'll go figure it out.
I love that, and the fact that you get a salary to do that and be that explorer is even quite extraordinary there. What I do like though, and I just want to end on this, is that humility factor that you do bring. You said what goes up comes down, and I think you recognize that everyone is on a bit of a trajectory, but that can change at any moment in time. And so it's important that we all stay humble, that we all stay we all giving back and being generous, because we never know when that down moment may occur. And finally, just big up the Indian DNA, as you talked about it, right? It's funny because I do see, and I do get that sense of it, and more we see great Indian CEOs hitting the global stage. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of that DNA that plays out in all of us to have a sense of hunger, but not have a sense of ruthlessness per se, but have a sense of the constant need to challenge ourselves and be competitive and collaborative at the same time in order to get ahead. And I think that you've got that in spades. And I hope that I've taken a little bit away of that over the years as well. So Arjun, thank you. Honestly, it's just been really, really inspirational.
Guys, it's been an honor. Thank you for having me on the show. And keep doing what you're doing. I think that is, like I said, it's so important for our industry. You guys bring some of the most inspiring guests. I love everything you guys are doing. So, I hope the message gets out to as many people out there with everything you do. And, again, if there's anything I can do by way of helping you guys or being able to mentor or anything, I think the School of Marketing is a remarkable, trailblazing, pioneering idea. We've needed that for years. So, kudos to you, Richie.
Thank you, man.
And it's lovely to meet you, Mark. And